So welcome everyone to today's Interagency Working Group, Four Corners Rapid Response Team Community Update. As you just heard, we are recording today's event. So, if you're interested in going back to sort of listening, more on a given topic, and for those that weren't able to attend today, please spread the word. We'll make this recording available on the energycommunities.gov website. And I will start sharing my presentation. Are we in full presentation mode?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I think we'll kick things off with Brian Anderson. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce Brian. He presently serves as the Energy Communities Interagency Working Group Executive Director and Senior Advisor on Energy Communities.
You could try and do it on the web browser too.
U.S. Department of Energy. And please go on mute. Thank you. And I share something in common with Brian. We're both engaged in coal mining as part of our family histories. So Brian, please take us away with some opening comments.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much. And yeah, like you said, it's in my family history. It's if you're from West Virginia, some say coal mining is in your blood, but there are many communities like in the Four Corners region where coal mining and coal power production has been the lifeblood for the economies historically, and that is changing for many needed reasons, like tackling the climate crisis. And so I want to be here to welcome you to today's virtual community update on the Energy Communities IWG Four Corners Rapid Response Team. If it's your first IWG event, welcome. Many of you, I recognize the names on the WebEx, and so it's not the first event, and you're looking for this update of what's going on in the Rapid Response Team in the Four Corners region. I want to start out with a big thank you to the Los Alamos National Laboratory and Kevin John in particular for the leadership that they're showing on the ground in the Four Corners region. It is really a mindset from the Interagency Working Group to start with communities, not from Washington or where I sit in Morgantown, West Virginia, to come in with the solutions for you. It's about working directly with communities, engaging with stakeholders, and that's why it was so critical that we launched this rapid response team to support energy communities in the Four Corners region. We want to make sure that as we transition to the clean energy economy, that the traditional fossil workers are not left behind, and knowing that the fossil workers have played a critical role in powering our nation and our economy for many generations. And so that's why the president in his first week in office challenged 11 federal agencies and the White House to work together to put resources into communities, but more importantly, work with communities directly in the challenges that they face in accessing critical federal funds. And so that's why we launched the Interagency Working Group. We are bringing together these 11 agencies. Your rapid response team in the Four Corners region is led by Los Alamos as a proxy for the Department of Energy, as one of our Department of Energy's 17 national laboratories, and such a great resource for us. But the mission's real clear. We need to break down barriers that energy communities typically face when you're accessing federal resources to make sure that no one's left behind. And we don't leave a community, we don't leave a worker behind in that shift to clean energy. And so the priority communities that were outlined in the original report to the president back just two years ago span across the country. It's Appalachia, it's the Illinois Coal Basin, it's absolutely the Four Corners region, the northern Rocky Mountain region, the Mid-Continent Gulf Coast, and Alaska. It's not just coal communities, but the oil and gas communities that are so prevalent also in the Four Corners region and New Mexico. Like all of America, these communities deserve access to reliable broadband, and so we're pushing that. Lots of investments in broadband, clean water, good roads, and affordable local transportation. And so specific in the Four Corners region, the Arizona non-metropolitan area was number 10 on the priority list, as ranked by the reliance on fossil energy jobs in Farmington, New Mexico was 16th. And so that's why we hosted one of our first events back in September of 21 in collaboration with the Navajo and Hopi Nations, and heard directly how important it is for us to get in front of this economic revitalization challenge. And so in the Four Corners region, we know that local communities are no stranger to the impact that declines in the coal industry jobs have on the community, even within the last year, the impact of closures. And so 3 of the 7 coal-fired power plants in the region have closed just in the last 4 years. And we know what that economic, social, and recovery challenges are across 4 different states, several tribal nations, including the Navajo, Hopi, Ute, and Zuni, and many of the regional councils of government in counties and localities. And additional closures have been announced. And so why I say that we know some of the hardships, why we have the rapid response team, again, why we're having this meeting today, is to make sure that we continue to hear the specifics of the hardships so we can work together to overcome them, to overcome the barriers that come with the lack of capacity in a community to access the billions of dollars of federal funding that's out there. And so that's why, again, we have this rapid response team. In addition to the one in the Four Corners region, we have one in Wyoming, we have one in Eastern Kentucky, and in Illinois Coal Basin, and several more that are being planned. And we have a second-year report that we released in April, on April 4th of this year. You can find it again at energycommunities.gov. And we have several more that we're planning on rolling out, because each rapid response team, each regional team, is unique and aims to address the specific challenges that face the communities. The communities in Southern Illinois are not the same as they are in the Four Corners region or in Wyoming or Appalachia. So we want to make sure we're hearing from community leaders across the spectrum to understand what the right path forward is to go. And so our second goal is to better coordinate our federal government response to communities. And I want to acknowledge and thank Mr. Rodman of the White House Council on Native American Affairs for being our really close partner on this, to make sure that we're working with the tribal councils and with the tribal nations in the Four Corners region. And I'm glad that Mr. Rodman will be joining us later this afternoon. And so I want to close and kick off into the meat of the meeting, because since the kickoff meeting for this Four Corners Rapid Response Team, which was last August in Farmington, the Rapid Response Team has been doing an amazing job in conducting a series of listening sessions and working to hear directly from stakeholders about your concerns and the opportunities. And you're going to hear more details from the Rapid Response Team lead in your Four Corners region, Kevin John, next. And I really want to, again, thank Kevin and the Los Alamos National Lab and our broader federal family for working together to elevate the voices of the stakeholders from this region and to make sure we're prioritizing and coordinating our progress on projects and issues. It is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to leverage the investments across the bipartisan infrastructure law, across the Inflation Reduction Act, to make sure we're driving down energy costs, enhancing energy security, but also jumpstarting the new era of clean energy jobs in our energy communities. And so the IRA has many different tax credits available, as well as the funding in the bipartisan infrastructure law. And I'd like to highlight how excited I was to hear very recently, just last week, about the recent financial close on the San Juan solar project, or final investment decision, which will take advantage of the transmission capacity at the San Juan generating station to create a solar and storage project that will help provide jobs and a tax base to the region. And we want to make sure that we're leveraging all of the opportunities across the IRA and the BIL to make sure that those supply chains, that the workers are supported in all of these projects. So as a reminder, you can find a lot of funding opportunities, a lot of tax credit outlines and the dedicated funding at energycommunities.gov. And again, it's my pleasure, and a tremendous thanks not only to the Los Alamos team and to Dr. Kevin John, but all of you who are here today who are engaged in getting this right, so that we don't leave any communities behind, including those in the Four Corners region. And so with that, Kevin, it's my pleasure to turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you for, I think, setting up the context of the rapid response teams and in terms of the broader interagency working group vision for coal communities. So I'll provide at least some context to start us off with and to set the stage for our speakers that will follow in terms of really defining the initial emphasis in the Four Corners region and how that sort of translated to the rapid response team. as Brian alluded to, the interagency working group, listed 25 communities that were at risk for a variety of reasons as communities, navigated coal transition. Our initial focus, was in Farmington, New Mexico. I think an emerging focus is in Arizona, and I think a further focus in Utah and Colorado, is something that we've just started to develop. But as Brian alluded to, in the bottom right-hand side, you can see the Four Corners region and the power plants that have either already closed or are pending closure in the timeline in the upper right-hand side, and really, beginning to sort of navigate, what we can do as a rapid response team to engage with and assist these communities. I think this region, is unique. There are many nuanced interfaces between state and tribal governments, as well as regional agency representatives. I expect we'll hear, about some of these interface challenges from Arvin Trujillo, who will be talking later. But really, I think there's a sense of urgency, as we look to sort of the early 2030s for this region, in terms of, navigating the coal plant, the coal mine, and supporting industry closures that are looming. So as Brian mentioned, we did kick off the rapid response team at the San Juan College School of Energy in Farmington in August of last year. We started with a significant amount of federal representation, including David Turk, pictured in the right-hand side as the Deputy Secretary of Energy. We had state and tribal representation, and we had a host of regional stakeholders at the meeting. And I think it was a very constructive meeting because it really set the stage for, what we started to focus on, as a rapid response team from that point forward. In terms of our team, our process and approach, we are interfacing directly with the 11 agencies that make up the interagency working group. You can see them pictured on the slide here. One of the first things that we did after the kickoff meeting is develop a charter and a work plan, based on feedback from community members and regional and tribal stakeholders that were at the meeting. And that really launched us on a series of listening and learning sessions that I'll talk about in subsequent slides. We maintain regular communication on a monthly basis with the interagency working group, as well as occasional outbriefs to the White House on sort of the issues, challenges, and opportunities that I think are unique to the Four Corners region. We have a number of ongoing engagements with state agencies for additional, leveraging beyond the federal agencies. And again, I think you'll see an emphasis on New Mexico to start, because we really did focus on the Farmington area because of the pending closure of the San Juan generating station, in the Farmington area. And, we've had a number of engagements with elected officials, both tribal and non-tribal, and community leaders, at all levels. So I want to, kind of go through, some of the things that we've heard thus far, by category, from the community, and really, here looking at workforce. I won't go through everything, shown here on the slide, but I will sort of highlight those issues in bold font that I think we'll have speakers later today, directly address in terms of broadband, sort of complexity of navigating federal funding and technical assistance, as well as reskilling of workforce that has been displaced or is about to be displaced, associated with plant and mine closures. The sort of graphic in the right hand side is certainly not comprehensive, but is reflective of sort of our initial regional outreach, which is continues to be ongoing. And it hasn't just been a dialogue with the community, we've engaged with our, agency representatives sort of related to the topic of workforce in terms of Department of Labor, Department of Commerce, as well as education. From an industry and economic perspective, we heard a lot about permitting and work plan approval delays. Again, broadband, general lack of infrastructure in the region in terms of really, setting the stage for economic diversity as the region navigates energy transition. And again, the topic of technical assistance, came up. And again, in terms of, industry and economic, development, we have had significant interactions with Department of Commerce, EDA, and the National Association of Counties and Development Organizations. And we'll see some of NACO's effort reflected in a presentation later this afternoon. From an environmental community perspective, we've really, talked a lot about the legacy of fossil fuels in the region, including, focus on orphan wells. I think navigating energy transition in terms of renewable technologies like solar and the broad need for regional capacity need in terms of establishing and organizing project teams and efforts. And again, you can see our regional outreach reflected in the graphic in the right hand side. And in addition to working with communities, we've leveraged the IWG agency resources in terms of EPA, USDA, and several other agency interactions based on the things that we've heard. And furthermore, we've rolled up challenges and opportunities in multiple venues to the White House level. So in terms of the remaining agenda, we've got an action-packed lineup. We're giving speakers 10 minutes to get through their topic. So we're going to hold questions until the very end of the event. But as Brian alluded to, we're very excited about D.E. Shaw Renewable Investments Project, the 200 megawatt solar facility that Noah Eckert will speak to. We'll have Arvin Trujillo from Navajo Nation, I think providing a unique set of perspectives on challenges and opportunities within the region. We'll have Mike Stark from San Juan County, New Mexico, speak to infrastructure needs, specifically looking at a rail spur project in the area. We'll have Waldy Salazar from the New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions speak to his office's efforts in really helping displaced workers from the San Juan generating station closure, mine, and support industry begin to navigate what's next. We'll have Mackenzie Taylor from the Community Builders team talk about emerging focus in developing capacity in New Mexico and Arizona. Heidi Bird will be here from the Federal Program Office of Internet Connectivity and Growth, speaking to tribal and non-tribal broadband activities in the area. And Mark Pearson and Rose Rushing providing an environmental community perspective for the Four Corners region. And then we'll wrap things up with a presentation from Morgan Rodman. And Morgan, I apologize for the typo, but Morgan is the executive director for the White House Council on Native American Affairs. So with that, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce Noah Eckert. He is a project manager from the D.E. Shaw Renewable Investments team. So Noah, I'm happy to drive slides for you moving forward.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. It's a real honor and pleasure to be part of this group and to be asked to share some of the activities that we've got going on out there in north of Farmington next to the San Juan generating facility. I really just have one slide, so it should be pretty easy driving, Kevin. And I'm a little I'm excited, but a little nervous to be the lead off here. So hopefully I can get this kicked off in a good way. So if you want to go to the next slide. So I know it's not the greatest, at least visual up close, but just to orient folks, the yellow represents solar panels. This is essentially a snapshot of our survey, our ALTA survey that we do as part of all our real estate and permitting entitlement work in order to get all the permissions that we need to build a facility and then get it designed. And on the left side, you can see it's a little bit small, but there's a little arrow that says power plant. So that is the existing San Juan generating station that was retired, end of last year. In coordination, just prior to that, the mine, the Westmoreland mine, coal mine facility there was also closed, and so both are moving into the decommissioning reclamation phase, and we're working closely with both parties. To just give a little history and context, or just another orientation, and I'll come back. I know I only have 10 minutes, so I will try to keep this as condensed as possible. But to the south of that map, that's the town of Kirtland, and then to the east is Farmington, to the west is Water Flow. That is the road that basically goes up into the mine property, and it's about a 5-mile drive, just for perspective, from the entrance there up to the project site. And then let's see. So I was going to hit some history here. So this project is 200 megawatts of solar and 100 megawatts of battery. It was originally developed by another company by the name of Photosol. They started the development work on this project in 2017. And so the land work, essentially reaching out to landowners and finding property and starting work on studies and permits is what happens. So just to give you a sense of the timeline, that's fairly typical for a project of this scale. That's a 5 to 6 year development window to get things moving. And as we just announced, a few weeks ago, we officially closed our financing and started construction in June. So if anybody's out in that area, you will see quite a bit of activity on the site. It's mostly civil, working on roads, and doing some prep work essentially ahead of the construction of the actual solar facility itself. So how does this project sort of fit in the dynamics of the last couple of years? The IRA, as everyone has seen, just the inflationary headwinds that's engulfing sort of all different pieces of the economy. Solar in particular has other challenges such as tariffs and trade challenges with sourcing of materials from China, in particular to panels, which caused some disruptions in our market. So very quickly, because I'd definitely like to touch on some regional issues and things we're excited about, and then what we're thinking about going forward. But this project was originally bid into an RFP back in 2021. It was awarded. There was a large pool of projects that PNM awarded. Obviously everyone's aware of the COVID pandemic. That created all kinds of challenges, and that coupled with some module scarcity and supply issues essentially shut down the solar market in 2022. And then there was also scarcity of EPC or contracting supply, which also pushed up prices. And as we've seen, inflation has also had headwinds just on the cost of funding and things along those fronts. So in December, I should say, in beginning of 2022 or Q1, a lot of these projects that PNM had awarded and was looking forward to help transition the closure of San Juan and other units on their system ran into material pricing headwinds. And so there was a lot of projects that were expected to move forward that did not. We purchased this project from the developer Photosol in March of 2022. And then it was a very long year of working with PNM, working with local stakeholders. I see Mike Stark. Nice to see you, Mike, on the phone, working with, San Juan County and lots of other stakeholders from BLM to the city of Kirtland, the San Juan Water Commission, just a ton of people involved in helping us work through how you essentially reprice this project. We had to revise the interconnection agreement, change how that looked. So almost wholesale had to update all the various agreements to make this project go forward. The good news is we were able to renegotiate a power purchase agreement with PNM. It did, this is all public information. It went through the PRC, which was approved in October. And then we re-signed the interconnection agreement, which allows us to get power on the grid in November. So it was a very busy year in 2022, just sort of putting the pieces back together, getting all the permissions and getting the economics and pricing in the right place. The first half of this year has then been a huge push on working with our financial counterparties, working with the county. We have essentially what I would call a pilot, but it's an IRB, industrial revenue bond structure, where we work with the county on financing and contributing to property taxes in the county. So over the last 6 months, we have secured modules, which was a relatively significant feat given the challenge that no modules really entered the country in 2022. Pulled together all the different pieces of the puzzle, and now we have 2 contractors on site. One that's building a 7-mile, what I would call an extension cord. It's a transmission line, it's 345 kV. That's being built. That's that long kind of umbilical cord looking thing that goes from our solar array there to the power plant. And I think, as Kevin noted, one of the really cool things about a project like this and others around the country is we can assuming the land around the coal plant, right, is feasible for siting a solar project or other renewables, wind, I suppose, could be another possibility. We can repurpose the existing infrastructure. So all of the substation and the equipment that was there, we are effectively using and plugging into with our project, which is why we have this long extension cord coming from our project into the power plant. So I want to pause there. I don't have a clock on my desktop here, Kevin, but are there other points? I'm happy to talk about the impacts that we're seeing or we expect to see, some of the other additional activities that we're seeing in the market and what we're looking for in the future as well. Kevin, you're on mute.
No, that was great. I think that, just giving the community a feel and a flavor for, what the project is, how it came about, I think is exactly, what we were hoping to see. So I encourage, since we won't have a Q&A session until the end, please use the chat if you have a question directly to NOAA. And we'll also, use our Four Corners Rapid Response Team at lano.gov email for subsequent questions that the community might have. So NOAA, thank you very much for taking the time to meet with us today and to talk about the project. Very excited to see it come online. So next I'd like to introduce Arvin Trujillo. Arvin was a key figure at our kickoff meeting last year. And at the time, Arvin was the CEO of the Four Corners Economic Development Team, and has subsequently, taken a role within President Nygren's office in Navajo Nation. And I very much value and respect Arvin's perspectives because I think he has his finger on the pulse, on sort of multiple, challenges and opportunities within the community. So Arvin, the floor is yours in terms of anything that you might want to comment on.
Thank you, Kevin. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Working on slides. See if I can get some slides, but things got a little out of hand over here with the Navajo Nation. I'm working on a number of different fronts right now, but I do want to talk about where we are or what my field is at this point. And what I think I see right now is there's some expertise that's going to be needed here in the region. We've got, having my experience with Four Corners Economic Development, and really looking at what Lena Fowler is working on out of Coconino County. I haven't had a chance to meet with her, but we've been communicating via email and phone calls. Right now, there seems to be a feast and a famine happening here in Four Corners. The famine, of course, is the counties right now, San Juan County, Coconino County, those counties that are somewhat McKinley County surrounding the nation. Really, those non-tribal areas are having real difficulty getting access to funding. And I think that comes back down to the lack of having capable grant writers to really research and go and find the money. Developing those grants, it's going to be, there's a lot of work in not only developing it, but getting the deliverables together, because the rules are still the same, whether you're looking at ARA money or IRA money or et cetera. The application process, the deliverables that have to come through, et cetera, still remain the same. And so having that expertise in those areas are essential to really, I think, effectively bringing dollars into these particular areas. On the tribal end of it, and I'm specifically talking about the Navajo Nation, you know, we've got $2 billion we've got to spend. We've been successful in allocating, and we're working on encumbering those dollars. But again, it comes back to expertise. We don't, right now, we're having difficulties with the capacity to manage these projects, making sure that these projects are going to get built on time, going to get built correctly, doing the necessary monitoring and auditing as these projects move forward to make sure that those things are done correctly, and making sure that the dollars are being spent in a way that's compliant with the various funding sources that are out there. So given that, you know, I come back to the idea of really how do we begin to coordinate the Four Corners area because of the diversity and because of the fact you have tribal and non-tribal areas that you've got to really be looking at, and how do you coordinate between governments, and how do you coordinate between different projects that these different entities are working on. And it brings me back to that aspect of, is there, I mean, this is looking midterm, but right now, finding a way that we can develop some type of a coordination entity that could help both sides to make sure we're all talking with one another. And we need funding to make that happen. Because again, it comes back to the difficulties that we encounter because of the complexities of the region here. And again, the Appalachian project comes to mind on how they are able to work on multiple fronts. And eventually that might be a way to address this, but in the short term, with the kind of timelines we have to work on right now, I think everybody's struggling. We've got parts of this region trying to struggle to at least find money and get money. You got other areas that have the money and are working to encumber it, but again, it's looking at the project management aspects of it. And you see the difficulties and the fact that with that lack of coordination, different situations come up. Simple case in point right now is the Chaco Canyon ban, and the changes that are being proposed there by the Department of Interior, the Navajo Nation's position, and how all of that is really affecting development in that area. So looking at a regional aspect, you know, we're looking at rail coming into the region. How do we best coordinate that piece? We're trying to do it on our own. Again, we need to look at that. Broadband. All the counties want to expand their broadband efforts. They're working with the particular states to do that. But the nation also is looking at how we're going to be doing that. We got a number of carriers who are doing that. How do we coordinate with one another so we get a good system coming up in the Four Corners region? And again, looking at energy development, we're looking at hydrogen, we're looking at pump storage, we're looking at, I mean, the nation's been inundated with projects. And so again, we're looking at how to review different ones and come back with recommendations on how to move forward. And so, you know, looking at those pieces, it still comes down to really being able to have access to the kind of expertise or teaching us how to really look at funding that may be available through the IRA or the ARPA so that we can utilize some of those dollars to bring expertise into the region to help us with these different areas. So, you know, that's what I see. I see areas that we got a flush of money and we're trying to figure out how to spend it. Then the time frames allow, and then we got other areas that really haven't gotten any money. And they're struggling to find ways to really get access to that money. So that's my presentation right now, kind of looking at what I see in the region right now from two perspectives. And like I said, I used to be with Four Corners Economic Development, and now I'm with the Navajo Nation. And so that kind of is my perspective.
Much appreciated, Arvin. And you know, for those that might have questions for Arvin, I understand that the chat feature may not be available to you know, all the attendees today. I think that we've put a email link in the chat that we are monitoring in real time. You know, so just wanted to make folks aware that we're developing kind of an alternative way to get questions out as we kind of go through our speakers. But Arvin, much appreciated, and I am desperately overdue to follow up with you. So looking forward to connecting soon. So thank you for your time today. And I think, you know, moving forward, you know, Arvin brought up sort of the topic of rail. This is something we heard loud and clear at the kickoff meeting, and we have Mike Stark from San Juan County, New Mexico, to speak today about the sort of rail spur concept, you know, in you know, the sort of Four Corners region from the New Mexico side. So, Mike, the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, thank you, Kevin, and good to be with everyone today on the call. To have the opportunity to just share with you what we're undergoing, this energy transition here in the Four Corners, San Juan County. A piece of infrastructure that's really important to future growth and development, and the potential replacement of the great, you know, union-based middle-class jobs that we're seeing an erosion of as the loss of coal-fired power and coal-fired electric generation in our communities here. Next slide, if you could, Kevin. Why this is so important, and it just mirrors the map that you had put up earlier, I think, with little descriptors about the various industrial opportunities that we're losing. As you mentioned, there's already 3 plants that have been shut down in and around the Navajo Nation, and there's more to come. And that's concerning because already a high level of poverty, as you can see from some of the statistics, that was pre-COVID. And of course, the Navajo Nation was one of the Four Corners, one of the most affected areas as a result of COVID. So we have sort of the double whammy of the energy transition that's happening with COVID hitting, and now trying to recover and try to put a plan in place for both. And so next slide, please. Another slide you had up earlier, which I think showed it was in a bubble format, but it showed that early 2030s is really important to our area, and why action needs to happen now as it relates to some of the various project opportunities, diversification opportunities, and infrastructure that's needed to facilitate those. This is a statistic from the Navajo Transitional Energy Company. Annual impact of the next plant that's scheduled to close in our area on the Navajo Nation, which is the Four Corners Power Plant. Annual impact of $124 million a year. Employment of 86% of the workforce of both the power plant and the mine are Navajo Nation members. It represents 40%, almost 40%, 39% of the general fund revenues of the Navajo Nation. And so that potentially is the next shoe to drop in our area. And that's, I think, the target date that we all need to have in mind as we're working towards energy transition in our area. Next slide, please. Freight rail, why is that important? Well, it's actually become more important, obviously, as a result of the transition, but something that's been on the radar for some time. And attempts have been made over the last 50 plus years to bring a rail spur to the Four Corners. As you can see in this slide, a huge gap as it relates to freight rail lines and transportation needs here in our area. We're one of the largest metropolitan statistical areas in the nation without a freight rail line. The only metropolitan statistical area in the state of New Mexico without a freight rail line, interstate or commercial air. And so that limits opportunities, both import and export, limits opportunities for our local companies to expand and grow. And so that's why this is so critical that we can work towards seeing this happen. Next slide, please. So the benefits that we anticipate seeing is that it would improve the overall transportation system in the Four Corners. And that means a lot of things in terms of, like I said, import and export opportunities with existing companies like Navajo Agricultural Products Industry, who would expand market opportunities, accessing the I-40 corridor, which is the BNSF Transcon line that runs from Chicago to LA. And obviously with the LA port giving you export opportunities to the entire globe. And so that's extremely important. It would help to reduce some of the trucking traffic here in the area. And there's some great environmental benefits that come from converting current transportation from truck to rail in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. So we think that, in addition to what's most important here, expanding economic opportunities for the region, San Juan County, the Navajo Nation, and really the Four Corners. Next slide, please. This just shares those anticipated project benefits that I mentioned. One thing I think is important to note, and we all, I think, got a better understanding of how important freight rail is to a community, to our country, is when the proposed freight rail strike was being discussed. 40% of our nation's goods are transported via freight rail. So that's showing once again how we've been missing out on that opportunity for lower transportation costs and ultimately goods in terms of pricing here in the area. The opportunity to bring certain projects and have products made here, manufacturing and otherwise that don't happen today because we lack a freight rail line. Next slide, please. So what's been unique about this project, and I want to give kudos to Mr. Arvin Trujillo, who spoke prior to me when he was the Four Corners CEO. He helped to facilitate an historic memorandum of understanding between San Juan County and the Navajo Nation. And that's what's helped to facilitate this project and get us further than we've been in 50 years of previous studies. It also allowed for us to collectively seek and sought a $2 million grant from the Department of Transportation, which is helping to fund this feasibility study. We have great support from our San Juan County legislative delegation, the Four Corners congressional delegation, and NMDOT, as well as a whole host of others, including our municipal partners like the City of Farmington and others in the area, private industry that sees the need and the opportunity here. Next slide, please. So that obviously shares with you the involvement that we have and how important that is to seeing this project become a reality as the Navajo Nation and how critical they are and how interested they are. Both President Nez, who with the MOU was signed with, and then here most recently President Nygren has affirmed his commitment to seeing the feasibility study completed, and then to see where that can take us in terms of capital funding for the project. Next slide, please. That just shares a little bit more about the build grant and how we're utilizing that, and how that grant's another key cornerstone to having this project moved on its way to hopefully completion of the plan by the end of this year, first quarter of next year. Next slide. And I do have quite a few slides, as you know, Kevin. So I'll go ahead and skip that one as well. That's redundant. Ditto. We issued a request for proposals, as we do for any large projects of this nature that are over $60,000 in professional services, and through a thorough evaluation process with our key stakeholders, we ultimately awarded that project to HDR Engineering, who has great expertise in both national, here in the U.S., designing railroad projects, but also internationally. And they've been very critical to the success of the project thus far. Really done a great job with trying to encourage as much public involvement and tribal outreach as possible. We want to make sure we're getting getting input from all the various folks in San Juan County, the Navajo Nation, the Four Corners, to make sure we can put together a really solid study, and then, like I said, ultimately make the case to some of the funding agencies at the federal level about funding the capital construction of this 90-mile spur to the I-40 corridor. Next slide, please. And you can continue on from there. One more. Talked about freight rail and why it's important. Next slide. That's just sharing what the feasibility study is going to evaluate, identifying potential route alignments, transloading facilities, and rights of way. We'll also study environmental impacts and the integration of a railroad project development plan. Next slide, Kevin. That just shares with you this grant's being overseen by the Federal Railroad Administration, and a lot of different tasks that have to be completed and evaluated as part of the study. And so you'll see all the way from, the freight demand forecast, route option analysis, investment options analysis, all the way down to an environmental analysis, as well as an economic feasibility analysis. It has to be deemed to be economically feasible. That makes sense to, and of course, enough import and export opportunities, which we believe exist, to make this a feasible project. Next slide. That's the timeline. It shows completion by October of 2024, only because that's the term of the grant. And as mentioned earlier, we anticipate that this is going to happen by the end of the year, first quarter of next year. So we'll be ahead of schedule relative to the grant, and then hopefully be able to be marketing a completed study. Next slide. A lot of public involvement and agency coordination. Mr. Al Henderson and Mr. Tom Chi have been invaluable to this project in trying to get information out to folks and working with the various chapters and making sure they have a complete set of facts and information on the pros and cons and benefits of the project. And so that's been very helpful. We've conducted 4 public outreach meetings to date, one in Shiprock, one in Farmington, most recently one in Newcomb, and one in Crown Point. And all of those have been helpful to helping to form and formulate what the needs are and what some of the concerns are with freight rail. Next slide. There's just an example of the public information meetings that we discussed. Next slide. Could be one more. That shows you what potential exists here. The import opportunities and the export opportunities. Obviously, farm products with NAPI, a real big opportunity there. Some of the value-added food products that could exist here if we had rail. Taking the corn and turning them into, or taking the potatoes and turning them into potato chips, and corn into corn chips, and other products that would be of high value that could be exported. Recyclables, some opportunities here to or recycle solar panels. It's great that we have the Desiree project going up. And so we know we have some other opportunities with recycling adjacent to them. So we want to explore those. Manufactured goods that would become a reality because that's, freight rail is necessary to see those types of products develop in an area. And of course, the import that comes that would be needed for existing businesses that are here, but also new businesses that would need raw materials to fuel their product lines and their growth. Next slide, please. And this is the last slide I wanted to share with the group. This is showing some of the recommended alignment routes, essentially 5 that come from the I-40 corridor intersecting with the Burlington Northern Santa Fe line in various locations. This is what we shared in our last round of public meetings and received some good input about which may be the most feasible, which may be the most utilized, which may allow for opportunities for local chapters along the way to add spurs and to add economic opportunities as the route moves from the I-40 corridor up into the Farmington area. It has been determined, you can tell, that the most ideal location for a transloading facility after analyzing this appears to be in the Nappy area, and that being one of the reasons being, if you take the rail line over the bluffs and across the river, you would double the cost of the rail line. And today it's anticipated, it's all a big estimate until you bid the job, but about a $500 million project. So knowing that want to be mindful of what project benefits would look like and relative to capital costs, that appears to be where we would terminate the route. So I can stand for I'll stand for questions after presentations, and once again, appreciate the opportunity to share this important infrastructure project with the group. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Mike. And I'll just leave this slide up for a couple of seconds just so people can connect for additional details on the rail spur effort. So much appreciated. And we'll move on to our next speaker, Waldy Salazar from the New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions, talking about the Energy Transition Act within New Mexico and sort of impact to displaced workers from the San Juan generating station closure, associated mine and support industry. So Waldy, please take the floor.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you, Kevin, for allowing us some time to give an update as to what Department of Workforce Solutions has been doing within the community of the Four Corners area with displaced workers and the employers that have been impacted by this closure of the San Juan power plant. As mentioned, my name is Waldy Salazar. I'm with Department of Workforce. And next slide, if you don't mind, Kevin. So a real quick overview, if you will, as to what the department has been doing for the last several years, if you will. First and foremost, we conducted multiple rapid response sessions and provided job search assistance to several of the displaced workers from the power plant itself. We worked closely with PNM and Westmoreland to streamline the unemployment process in regards to qualifying applicants for unemployment benefits, which we wanted to make sure it didn't impact their severance and any other income that they may have been receiving. So we worked closely with our unemployment division side and made sure that happened. We also took it a step further and we went actually out to Farmington and conducted what we call unemployment sessions, where we were able to meet with individuals one-on-one and file their unemployment claims so they wouldn't feel such an impact on receiving some monies while they were affected by the closure. We also worked closely with San Juan College on building a bridge program, and this allowed individuals to explore various careers that the college offers in Farmington. From that effort, I want to say we had about 27 individuals that took on various programs, may have been a certificate program or a associate degree level type curriculum at San Juan College. And then lastly, we've been working aggressively to provide the direct assistance to the displaced workers using the ETA funds that were allocated to Department of Workforce. Next slide. From the ETA payments to date, this is our phase one of this particular process. We've been able to issue out $20,000 one-time payments to all those individuals that have been impacted by the closure. All workers eligible if they are New Mexico residents or were at time of the layoff a resident, and there was no restrictions based on reemployment, retirement, and or severance for them to apply for and receive this one-time $20,000 payment. We met and received applications to date of 404 applications approved. We have 354 $20,000 checks that have been delivered as of the 13th of this year. And we've estimated through this round that we've expended 8.5 million with a reserve of 1.1 that is still available. Next slide, please. We were able to capture some demographic information while we were doing rapid response sessions with the audience that has been displaced. And as you can see from the slide, 89% male, 43% Native American, majority 95 Navajo, and 50% were union members. Of this audience that we were able to meet with, 31% had indicated they were retiring or retired. Next slide. Location in regards to where these individuals lived. Majority lived in the San Juan County communities, other than the surrounding Four Corners areas. So majority in Farmington is what we identified. Next slide. Educational levels from the individuals that have been impacted by this closure. You can see many of them, have their high school GED. Or the idea behind this was for us to identify who would be interested in potentially going back to school for continuing education to receive either a degree, certification, etc. So this was information that was valuable for us to continue the conversations with the colleges in the Four Corners areas and how we can capture our work opportunity tax credits to get them potentially in some of these programs offered out there. Next slide. Work in school. So from the individuals we were able to talk to, we identified 176 did express interest in going back to school, which was, again, good information for us to have as we move forward and working closely with all of these individuals impacted. Next slide. Wage differentials. The average differential we identified for those individuals that were reemployed after the layoff was, they reported they were making less than 27,000. 19 had reported they were making more than or the same amount as to when they were laid off. Next slide. Okay, so next steps for Department of Workforce. We're going to continue with round one, which is issuing the $20,000 payments to those individuals that continue to come forward and provide us with an application. We're going to continue to coordinate with our Economic Development and our Indian Affairs Division on working towards creating additional funding streams for jobs, develop proposals for additional uses of funds, and continue to partner and communicate with the ETA Community Advisory Group. August through December, we're going to start implementing plans for additional funding and continue the collaboration for additional funding for these displaced workers throughout the Four Corners area. And that I want to say is next slide. I'm pretty sure we're done there, Kevin, with the slides we have.
I think that's it. But yeah, I really want to take the opportunity to, thank Waldy, thank Secretary Nair, for their efforts and really highlight the fact that this has been I think an outstanding interaction, between a state office, the community, as well as at the federal level, working with Department of Labor and our regional rep, Rebecca Sarmiento. And similarly, I think with the rail effort, some of our support coming from DOT to sort of, push that forward. So Waldy, thank you very much. And again, I encourage you to use our email link or the chat if it works for you, to connect with Waldy. But thank you very much.
Our pleasure, Kevin.
Much appreciated. So moving forward, it's my pleasure to introduce Mackenzie Taylor as a project manager for the Community Builders team. I think this really speaks to maybe an initial step in helping the region with some of its capacity needs. So Mackenzie, I will turn the floor over to you.
Thanks, Kevin. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here with you today, and I'm going to be giving a quick update on the Building Resilient Economies in Coal Communities, or BREC, Action Challenge process. So I'm going to start with some background information on BREC for those who aren't as familiar with it. You can go to the next slide. BREC is a program funded by the EDA and administered by the National Association of Counties. Its aim is to provide resources, technical assistance, and education to assist communities as they transition away from coal economies. NACO has several partners in this work, including Community Builders, which is the organization I work for. I'll tell you all more about that in just a minute, as well as EntreWorks Consulting and the West Virginia Community Development Hub. We as partners contribute to a lot of different aspects of BREC, but our focus is really as regional technical assistance providers. Next slide. There are several components of the BREC program, including an educational webinar series known as the National Network, which I really encourage everyone to sign up for. It's open to anyone who's interested and provides a lot of great learning and case studies through the bi-monthly sessions, which are also recorded. The next webinar is actually tomorrow afternoon, so I do have to give a quick plug for that. It will cover outdoor recreation as a tool for economic diversification. And I'm going to drop a link for that in the chat. In addition, BREC also includes a leadership network, a storytelling campaign, and the piece that I'll be focusing on today, which is the Action Challenge, an assistance and capacity building program, as Kevin was saying. Next slide. So the Action Challenge is an application-based program. The communities that are currently receiving technical assistance were selected based on a number of criteria, including readiness and need. This is a highly tailored 12-month coaching process. So it's pretty quick. And ultimately, we're working towards very tactical steps to plan, implement, and fund economic revitalization and diversification projects. Next slide. Of the teams that applied, 8 were selected for this year's cohort, and we at Community Builders are working with the 3 Western teams, which are the Northern Arizona counties of Apache, Navajo, and Coconino, the Four Corners Economic Development Organization in San Juan County, and the Northwest Colorado counties of Routt, Rio Blanco, and Moffett. And I just want to use this opportunity to give a quick shout out to our team members. They have all been really welcoming and dedicated and engaged and are really the crucial piece to this whole puzzle. So our aim, and you can go to the next slide, is to guide these communities through a process that is very strategic, intentional, and practical. Because we only have 12 months, this unfortunately isn't the process that will include really in-depth grassroots community engagement. That's very important work, of course, and it's a lot of what we do at Community Builders. But given the scope and timeline, we are really focusing on building off all of the great work that's already been done, which is really robust, and taking guidance from existing policies, priorities, and initiatives to help them move towards implementation. Next slide. For a little bit about us as an organization, Community Builders is a small nonprofit based in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. Our focus is in really partnering with rural communities to address the challenges and changes facing the West. We've worked with a variety of communities experiencing major economic transitions, whether that be from oil and gas, mining, or energy generation. It's a very common story in the West, which has seen so many cycles of boom and bust. And our approach really tries to be one of partnership, empowerment, and capacity building. So next slide. This is a high-level look at the Action Challenge process. This set of steps provides some structure while still keeping the process loose enough that it can be tailored to each community and their individual starting points. We've spent the last few months laying the groundwork and getting to know our 3 communities. And that's meant a lot of work building trust, figuring out existing conditions, reviewing policy documents, data, conducting site visits. It's really been a whirlwind, and we now find ourselves rounding a very important corner. Next slide. From information gathering to beginning to compile and articulate the opportunities and goals, which will then work with the teams to narrow into priority strategies and projects, and finally into very achievable action steps. Next slide. So in our work to date, we've completed a number of outputs, including some community assessment deliverables that I do want to highlight really quick. The policy scan took a close look at each area's existing policy documents, including regional SEDS, county municipal comprehensive plans, strategic plans, impact analyses, really any relevant policy or economic document, to try and find areas of alignment or policy gaps. Those areas of alignment can be referenced by our teams to show the region's commitment when pursuing funding opportunities, and places where there are gaps can hopefully be bolstered. It's a fairly common story that we hear that a community will be interested in a funding opportunity but aren't able to point to a case for that funding in the SEDS or some other local policy document, and therefore aren't successful in pursuing it. So through the policy scan, we got to know a lot about the communities and simultaneously really tried to help them identify those potential issues. Similarly, we've collected a lot of data and compiled some of the key metrics that illustrate the impacts of coal transition, which was important, again, for our own understanding of these communities, but also can be used by them as a tool to make their case to potential funders or partners in the future. Next slide. So looking at where we're going in the process, at a high level, we're going to be providing a variety of tools to enhance each team's capacity, really, to evaluate projects, connect to available funding resources, and then hopefully successfully pursue those resources. Overall, we're trying to fill some of the gaps that Arvin mentioned as best we can within that quick timeline. These teams do have a lot of really substantive and exciting things that we'll be able to share out in the future, but I did just want to mention that we are still very much in the early phases, so we're intentionally not going to go into any specifics at this point. Instead, you can go to the next slide. I mostly just wanted to share some takeaways and some fun photos from our recent trips to the region, focusing specifically on Northern Arizona and San Juan County as those Four Corners adjacent geographies. Next slide. In San Juan County, we had the opportunity to visit Aztec, Bloomfield, Farmington, Kirtland, and several other areas in and around the county. We saw a lot of great work being done and progress being made. You can go to the next slide, including strong partnerships, a lot of community pride and placemaking, and significant potential in areas like outdoor recreation, energy development, agriculture with NAPI there, healthcare, education, and tourism. The collaboration in this area is quite strong, especially with ForceEd there as a convener. Right, next slide. Some challenges we saw were in infrastructure gaps, fewer local businesses despite some great entrepreneurship supports in place, and some major barriers to business attraction, including those infrastructure needs, unconsolidated sites, and limited organizational capacity, such as a development authority, for example. All right, and then in Northern Arizona, next slide, we visited the communities of Holbrook, Joseph City, St. John's, Springerville, Eager, Pine Top, Shoalo, and Snowflake. Yeah, and like I said, absolute whirlwind. Next slide. Similarly to San Juan County, we saw so much strong leadership, collaboration. Of course, everyone knows just an abundance of caring, passionate, hardworking people. We also saw some major diversity in geography. At one point, we all had to put on sweaters in Arizona in July, which was a fun anecdote for anyone who's not as familiar with the area. And the differences in geography also make for a variety of opportunities across the communities, but there are also some strategic commonalities between the areas, like agriculture, forestry, energy opportunities. And there's very exciting progress being made in infrastructure and business development as well. Next slide. As in most rural areas where we work, there are also limitations, of course, especially in terms of capacity, infrastructure, and really crucial quality of life factors like housing and healthcare. There are challenges to be tackled in both communities, but from our outside perspective, at least, having worked in a lot of similar places, none of these challenges are insurmountable, and many align quite well with the abundant funding opportunities that we're seeing for coal communities right now. Last slide, I think. So I will just close with a quick snapshot of some next steps. We'll be working closely with our teams to refine regional strategies and then identify new projects or help prioritize existing ones, pair those projects with funding opportunities, and develop a variety of communication materials to help them implement those projects and initiatives. There's a lot of work to be done, obviously, but we are off to a strong start and have built some good momentum to move forward with. So I'm sure I'm over time. So with that, I will hand it back over.
Thanks, Mackenzie. And I just really want to say that I'm personally excited, based on what I've seen thus far, really looking forward, to interacting with the community builders team from a rapid response team perspective, as some of these ideas, begin to take shape. So thank you very much. And again, please use the chat. Please use our email if there are specific questions that you want to convey to the community builders team. But again, thank you very much. I think moving forward, it's a distinct pleasure of mine to introduce Heidi Bird from the Federal Program Office of Internet Connectivity and Growth for New Mexico. Heidi was one of the sort of first federal leads that I reached out to, along with her colleague and my neighbor, Gabe Montoya. I think we heard at our kickoff event that need for broadband was absolutely critical for education and for economic diversification. So Heidi, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. Such a pleasure to work with you. Good afternoon, everyone. As Kevin said, my name is Heidi Bird. I am the Federal Program Officer for New Mexico. I'm actually based in Albuquerque. I'm so proud to be part of this task force, as part of my family actually resides in Farmington. So I understand the challenges that are coming forward in your region. Being a federal program officer here for New Mexico, and my apologies for a lot of people on this call for the Four Corners and other regions, in Colorado, Utah, Arizona. I have their contact names and email addresses at the end of this slide. I've been asked to be part of this task force, but I'm just going to highlight some things of New Mexico, if you all don't mind. So on June 30th, all the states got their BEAD allocations for for broadband. New Mexico received about $675 million. We had an incredible press conference at the Santa Fe Indian School on July 6th that included Mitch Landrieu, who is a senior advisor to the president. Of course, our wonderful delegation, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, Senator Ben Ray Lujan, Representative Teresa Ledger Fernandez, and then, of course, our very own April McLean Delaney of NTIA. What we're seeing right here in the Four Corners, as we've been discussing, is the closures of the plant of the San Juan generating station and the mines. Let's go to the next slide, please. So as of today, New Mexico has been funded about $185 million. But I did not add to this slide, which I do want to share, is how much the regions that are in our Four Corners. So Hickory Apache received about $6.9 million. Southern Ute received about $43.7 million. and Ute Mountain received about 22.7 million. And then in Arizona, the Dilkin Chapter House received about 33.2. I think that we are very lucky to be in this region, that our states work really well with our tribes and working and ensuring that they have a seat at the table, and that we're hearing the concerns that they have in regards to broadband. You know, I've heard in some calls about like how water is an issue coming to the house. And so it's wonderful to be part of this project and to see that there are a lot of dialogues happening moving forward. This is a project that's going to take about like 4 to 5 years to complete. We're in the very beginning stages of it. But I would like to say that as for my New Mexico state, they have been starting this dialogue of workforce development solutions in the Four Corners, inside of the New Mexico area. But it's really exciting what we're going to start doing moving forward. I think a year from now, we're going to have much more information moving forward. But it's very exciting what we're doing. And then we'll go to the next slide. So I wanted to share this with all of you, just so that you all have a contact info. And I'm just going to put in the chat as well that you're able to see what the Internet for All website has in terms of what the funding is, seeing what the tribes are being funded in your respective states. And it's a very interactive map, and I wanted to share that with you. But if you have any questions moving forward, please let me know. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thanks, Heidi, and also, thanks to Gabe, who I saw on earlier. I think Gabe is the point of contact for tribal broadband investment. So I really have appreciated the interactions that we've had. I see a lot of money coming into, I think, the Four Corners region, into tribal communities, and really the challenges of sort of integrating all of those investments. I think is kind of what we see as a point of emphasis and focus moving forward. But again, really happy to sort of have made the connections that we've made, and looking forward to working with the other Four Corners states as rapid response focus evolves. So thank you very much, Heidi.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce Mark Pearson as the Executive Director for the San Juan Citizens Alliance, and Rose Rushing, who serves as an attorney for the Western Environmental Law Center. I think one message we heard loud and clear from our kickoff event is we needed to engage a broader set of voices, as we move forward with rapid response. And I've had the distinct pleasure to have had several interactions with Mike Eisenfeld from the San Juan Citizens Alliance team, among several other groups and individuals in the environmental community in the Four Corners area. So Mark and Rose, happy to turn the floor over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Appreciate the invite to participate today. And as you noted, I'm the Executive Director of San Juan Citizens Alliance. Our climate and energy program manager is Mike Eisenfeld in Farmington. Mike's out for the month of July, and so couldn't attend today. So he asked for Rose and myself to fill in for him. And Rose is in Farmington there also with Environmental Law Center. San Juan Citizens Alliance is a nonprofit, grassroots-based community organization with about 1,000 members in the San Juan Basin in northwest New Mexico and southwest Colorado, and we've been very engaged in a lot of these kind of energy transition issues for a long time. Next slide, Kevin, there. So there we are, and you can move on to the next one too. Thanks. So we with a number of our partner organizations have been very focused on addressing climate change locally here in our own backyards by trying to accelerate the transition from burning fossil fuels for electricity to renewable energy, and then the associated economic and community transition that requires. And so we're pleased to be here today. Appreciate that in August, you had Nicole Horserter with Tonajone Ani on the agenda, and we'd really, encourage that you continue to make a strong effort to include folks like Nicole and people from Dene Care and NEVA and some of the other sort of impacted community voices that are in the region and have been living with and dealing with some of the impacts associated with the fossil fuel economy there for a long time in the Four Corners region. So we've, there's a few things that we've been pretty excited about. One is the movement towards replacement renewable energy with that Noah touched on briefly. There's a reclamation economy that's in process and in the Four Corners as well. And then there's been some tremendous activity spurred by San Juan County and the city of Farmington on the Animas River and making, improving the recreational access there and amplifying it as an opportunity economically in the region. The next slide. So on the reclamation economy front, one of the things some of our members and Mike and our staff identified in the last year or so is the orphaned well situation. In particularly, there's a field west of San Juan generating station called the Hugback Field, and there's quite a few decrepit, idled, abandoned, orphaned wells out in that region, and we helped elevate those and brought them to the attention of Bureau of Land Management and New Mexico Oil Conservation Division. And there's already 25 million plus dedicated to New Mexico for working on orphaned well cleanup statewide. This is an opportunity that we, talking with you, Kevin, and Los Alamos National Lab. There's an opportunity for partnering here to use technology to better identify through remote sensing abandoned wells, in particular ones that are leaking methane that are contributing to the climate change crisis. And so if we can both clean up those wells, but also there's a tremendous economic benefit there as well in terms of putting to work lots of the folks who already have those skills in the Four Corners who are able to do well plugging and abandonment and associated reclamation. So that's a great opportunity that we see that goes hand in hand, both cleaning up the environment and good economic benefits for jobs in the community. There's also going to be tens of millions of dollars spent here in the next few years by Westmoreland and PNM on reclamation and decommissioning at the San Juan Mine and San Juan Generating Station. And those are, I think, are really important economic opportunities that will help bridge to whatever longer term opportunities might come to fruition. But in the meantime, we should really, I think, emphasize and celebrate and embrace those reclamation jobs that are out there. Next slide. Yeah, it was great to have Noah from D.E. Shaw on at the beginning. Would have been great to hear a little bit more about what are the job benefits exactly from construction of the project out there and what the tax base is, and maybe Mike Stark with the county might be able to talk about the tax base implications there. But this is exactly the kind of energy transition that we have encouraged to occur in the Four Corners region. The first phase of San Juan Solar is 200 megawatts. There could be a second phase with another 200 megawatts. There's another, 4 or 5 solar projects that have come into operation in the Four Corners within the last few years that Navajo Tribal Utility Authority has overseen, and PNM replacement projects like at Arroyo. There's another 4 or 5 projects just over the state line in Colorado under consideration. others like Shiprock Solar west of San Juan power plant that are in discussion. So there's a tremendous opportunity here, and it seems like also the opportunity for a workforce to be able to sequentially work on multiple projects over a number of years. So it's not just sort of a boom or bust construction opportunity there. And one of the key things we were always focused on with the Energy Transition Act was to make sure that the tax base from the San Juan power plant was replaced within the Central Consolidated School District, and San Juan Solar is a great example of that in action. Next slide. So what are some of the big picture items we see? Well, we can see the Four Corners as a renewable energy hub. It has this tradition and of being an energy production powerhouse that supplies energy throughout the West and the Southwest in particular, and that can continue, it seems, with the abundance of solar energy resources that are available. New Mexico has proposed a big power line project called New Mexico North Path that will connect Northeast New Mexico, the wind energy in Northeast New Mexico, with Farmington and the transmission hub that radiates out from Farmington that should help continue Farmington's reputation and as an energy production center in the West. Touched on the reclamation economy. And there are, a lot of skills and expertise in the community that can be put to work there. And then the recreation economy, again, kudos, particularly to the county and to Farmington for taking advantage of some of the funding opportunities that have existed from the damages associated from the Gold King mine spill at the headwaters of the Animas River in 2015. San Juan County, was able to tap some of those funds and construct a new river access point at Cedar Hill that was there was a ribbon cutting just a month or so ago, and that opens up a good stretch of the Animas from Cedar Hill downstream to Aztec for recreation. Farmington has secured a number of grants for additional improved river access points through the city of Farmington, and as well as some additional improvements for boater access on some of the irrigation diversion projects along the Animas River. So it's I think the community is really embracing recreation and sort of the attendant sort of lifestyle amenity benefits that are associated with that will just help market Farmington to retirees or people who want to relocate or bring new businesses or start new businesses. And it's a great hand-in-hand contribution to some of the other things that we see happening. So that's sort of like a quick high level, I think, sense of how we see the transition happening in the Four Corners. And there's many things already in process with, real jobs, real people, real taxes happening right now, and we really are enthusiastic about the trajectory of the Four Corners here.
Thank you much, Mark. And Rose, is there anything that you want to add to sort of this environmental focus?
Just thank you so much, Mark, for going over that, and thank you, Kevin, for the opportunity. I think we're really excited for the opportunity for a just and equitable and sustainable transition. And the chance for economic diversification in the region. A lot of overlap, I think, on this call. So stuff like technical assistance for the region, stuff like exciting opportunities for renewables and cleanup. It's already happening, as Mark said. And I would just sort of urge everybody on the call who sort of has, influence with this transition to remember as well, community needs, from things like healthcare and housing to clean air and water. And that's sort of the economic diversification and the future that we would love to have here in Four Corners. So thank you.
Thank you, Rose, very much. And thanks, Mark, for the presentation. And again, I think the goal of today is to, I think, give the community a flavor, of kind of what's happening in the region. Again, it's a largely New Mexico focus because that's where I think the Four Corners rapid response really, started to cut its teeth. But I hope it gives communities in Arizona, Utah, and Colorado, a sense of things that we can work on together, moving forward. So again, thanks to our speakers thus far. I want to turn the floor over now to Morgan Rodman, who serves as the Executive Director for the White House Council on Native American Affairs. I gave Morgan a fairly open set of topics to sort of bring forward. So Morgan, I'll turn it over to you, and thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Kevin. I'm very happy to be here and to engage with you all virtually today. Again, my name is Morgan Rodman, and I serve as Executive Director of the White House Council on Native American Affairs. I am Cherokee and Osage from Oklahoma. And I want to share a bit today about what the Council is and some of the work that we're doing that's relevant to the discussion today, including efforts on energy transition. And I'll start by talking a little bit about the Council itself. The White House Council on Native American Affairs is a cross-governmental body that's chaired by the Secretary of the Interior, who in this case, of course, is Secretary Deb Haaland. And it's also co-chaired by the Director of the White House Domestic Policy Council, and that's Neera Tanden. The other council members are the secretaries and the heads of agencies and other senior administration officials. President Obama created the council by executive order back in 2013 after long-standing requests from tribal leaders for a cabinet-level body that focuses on tribal and Indian country issues. Tribes wanted an interagency entity that supported the development of Native American federal policy that reinforced the trust responsibility the U.S. government has to tribes, and overall, a council that promoted a better, more responsive federal government for tribes. The White House Council is the only federal body that cuts across all the major cabinet agencies and reaches over 20 departments to focus just on Indian country issues. The Council creates and executes cross-government policy like tribal consultation, implementing executive orders ranging from environmental justice to public safety and justice, and more. The Council also coordinates on the execution of statutes that apply to tribes and facilitates tribal leader engagements in a nation-to-nation fashion to help steer the work of federal agencies. The Council itself at the cabinet level meets at least 3 times a year and also leads the administration in hosting the White House Tribal Nations Summit, which happens every year at the end of the year, in which the president, vice president, the cabinet, and other federal leaders meet with tribal leaders to discuss policy matters and issues that are important to Indian country. President Biden revived both the White House Council on Native American Affairs and the Tribal Nations Summit during his presidency. The Council has 6 committees, one of which focuses on energy, economic development, and infrastructure, and that's co-led by the Department of Energy. The other co-leads include transportation, commerce, and small business administration. Last summer, these agencies, in addition to USDA and Department of Education and Interior, met in Colorado for a 2-day session to develop ideas around energy transition. In other words, supporting tribes who have been largely reliant on non-renewable energy in their move towards renewable energy. I was at that meeting as well. It was in Lakewood, and we had a pretty packed agenda with a lot of brain power in those 2 days. And thinking about how these diverse federal departments with their different missions could come together to support tribes and improve their access to federal resources, to technical assistance and funding, especially in light of these historic laws like the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. Over the course of those few days in Colorado and facilitated by the White House Council, the agencies all agreed to an interagency memorandum of understanding as a good vehicle to support Navajo Nation and its access to renewable energy resources. The federal team worked with Navajo on finalizing the MOU, and there was a signing ceremony at the 2022 Tribal Nations Summit between Navajo leadership and Secretary Granholm in the Department of Energy. Secretary Haaland also signed the MOU And there are other federal agencies that are listed in this document, as well as their commitments. We hope to use this as a model for other tribes and other federal agencies in energy transition work. In addition to Interior and Energy, the other agencies who are mentioned in that MOU are USDA, Education, and Transportation. Some of the key elements of that MOU include the BIA supporting access to information about the tribe's trust resources, including information on siting, permitting, and leasing, providing technical assistance on energy and mineral resource evaluation, offering energy market opportunity assessments, facilitating partnership and business development. USDA, with their state office energy coordinators and field representatives, will work with the tribe on identifying USDA programs that could help finance energy transition projects. USDA will also bring to bear the financing opportunities from the Inflation Reduction Act. The Department of Education will help convene community meetings to provide information and updates on energy transition, and also work with tribal colleges and universities to develop relevant educational programs and certificates for renewable energy. Department of Transportation will also provide technical assistance and increase engagement with DOT offices with the tribe, like the Routes Office and the Office of Disadvantaged Businesses. So really plugging in with those resources that are in DOT with Navajo Nation. And of course, all of this is led by the Department of Energy, and they are definitely taking an innovative approach to this MOU. And one of the ways that they're doing that is funding a full-time employee for the tribe to support energy transition. And this is really key and perhaps obvious from some perspectives, but it's not often done by the federal government, and we're hoping to change that, funding a full-time employee for the tribe to manage energy affairs. The White House Council of Native American Affairs is striving again to establish this whole of government approach to overcoming challenges. And this MOU is a good example of doing that by pulling the expertise, the resources, using the authorities the different agencies have to support tribal energy transition work. And again, we're looking at this as a potential model. We're working with the Hopi tribe as well. And I've had discussions with a few other tribes and hope to make some more announcements on this front at the Tribal Nation Summit. I'd like to mention also really quickly, one of the other initiatives coming out of the council is exploring the Indian Energy Purchase Preference, which is the authority within the Energy Policy Act of 2005 that authorizes DOD, GSA, and Department of Energy to give a preference to Native American sources of energy and products. So energy products, it's never been executed or implemented. There is a lot of activity on how that could get done now underway. And again, we hope to show some progress on that at the summit later on this year. So that's just some quick highlights. You can find more about the White House Council of Native American Affairs by Googling White House Council of Native American Affairs, and the actual website is www.bia.gov/WHCNNA. But it's usually easier just to search for it online and it'll pop up. You can see everything all the stuff that we're doing. So I'll turn it back to you, Kevin.
Thank you very much, Morgan. And yeah, I've been engaged a little bit in terms of the MOU process with Navajo Nation, and I'm really sort of excited, about what that might kind of bring, to the Navajo community, and excited to hear that MOU process, will be likely expanded to other tribal communities. So I think that's something to really be paying attention to, as I think as efforts unfold in the region. So thank you for your time today, and very, very much you sort of appreciate the national perspective that you bring.
Thank you.
I want to take the opportunity now to maybe start table setting in terms of what the rapid response team in the Four Corners region could be doing moving forward But I want to take a step back, to Brian's presentation, and again, really encourage you all to take a look at the energycommunities.gov site that I think details a lot of the opportunities, that you've heard about today. In particular, I'd like to call your attention to the recently issued 2-year report to the president. So, what we are doing, is, being communicated at a variety of levels, all the way up to the president. So I really want to take this opportunity to thank everyone that the Four Corners Rapid Response Team, has engaged with, over roughly the past year, since we had our kickoff meeting in August. And, I'm very much looking forward to expanding, to include additional interactions and really, I think, developing and growing the interactions, that we've established in terms of year one of our effort. I really want to continue, the community dialogue and the community connection. I think in my mind, I'm framing some ideas in terms of, enhancing exchange between the community and the interagency working group, leaders, moving forward. I think we see a number of concepts emerging, one being a Four Corners region, economic summit. I think we're seeing some movement on this, already in terms of exchanging best practices, continuing to address, this need for capacity and refining and growing, our regional voice, across the Four Corners area. Certainly see, a workforce of tomorrow, summit need in terms of, looking at new energy and environmental jobs, as Mark alluded to, in terms of sort of the environmental reclamation efforts that we see underway, and really, retraining, our workforce as we navigate, coal transition and attracting, workforce that we may have lost, across the region, as coal plants and mines have closed. And I think this is especially important in terms of, sort of, maintaining the integrity, of our tribal communities. I think there's a need for an environmental summit in terms of, discussions related to plant and mine site repurposing, and really exploring the impact of renewable energy jobs in the region. I think that I'm toying around with the idea of a capacity building roadshow where, we bring grant writing resources and federal resources, to our Four Corners communities and really, showcase some of the exceptional ideas that I've been exposed to, over the past year. And certainly, seeing a need regionally related to our need for water, as it relates to energy transition and really sort of understanding, the impacts of new energy technologies, new industries, and building on something that we started with our IWES team in terms of an energy water student symposium that we hosted at San Juan College in April of this year. And, it's not just the rapid response teams that I think are leading regionally relevant topics. I think in, the Arizona and Utah communities, I've heard a lot of interest in, the coal to nuclear transition and sort of interfacing with Department of Energy and some of their teams in terms of, what might that transition look like to those coal communities that are interested. So I think working with, the Department of Energy in a workshop that is planned in November of this year in terms of, really addressing community needs as we begin to sort of look at coal transition in an ever accelerating fashion. And I want to encourage, everyone, that's still, on the line to reach out to our Four Corners Rapid Response Team at lano.gov email listing. I hope there's been a good exchange in the chat today that I'll plan to follow up on. And again, do reach out either via that channel or for those that I've already been communicating with directly. You know how to find me. And I'm anxious to continue our dialogue. So with that, I think I will stop sharing and just open it up to. I think any comments or questions. I really want this. I think the input from our community, from this team, as we sort of define the next year of focus for our Four Corners Rapid Response Team. So I think with that, I'm closing the sort of presentation phase of today's event.
Kevin, this is Mike Corianis from Price, Utah. I appreciate you including me in this. Really, it's been really enlightening to hear, the plans going forward. As we talk about reclamation, I've had people tell me that, we're going to be sorry that we've been burning the coal to produce energy. And as you talk about reclamation, has there been thoughts as we, reclaim these mines and cover up the portals and everything? Has any thought gone into maybe keeping those portals open for coal carbon fiber and those uses of coal other than burning it? I don't know if anybody's addressed that. And, so that was one question. And then the other thing is, how long will this money be available, as we go down this road of, reclamation and just different projects? I applaud this administration right now. They're putting the money out to help us transition, but you know how fast that can go away with just a vote, and that's what worries me is, in our area in Carbon and Emery counties, the closure of our plants isn't slated till 2032. That's what worries me too.
Yeah, so maybe addressing the last part of your question first. The bipartisan infrastructure law, I think gives us a reasonable window of 3 to 5 years moving forward, and perhaps I'll bring in Briggs White from the interagency working group. Briggs, I don't know if you want to sort of add on to that answer in terms of sort of the length of funding support for some of the initiatives that the IWG represents.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can't predict the future. I do agree that there are statutorily defined funding that's available through the BIL and the IRA. And so, I do think that provides a certain amount of certainty of funding availability, but it's absolutely right that the executive branch will play a critical role in implementing that with its discretionary authority where applicable. I think on the mayor's first point about reclamation, I would just point out, and I noticed there's some other folks on the call here, that in other parts of the country, the issue of reclaiming part of the mine and retaining part of the mine infrastructure to use that as an asset for economic development, whether that's supply chain work or the coal to carbon products or what have you, that is being explored. And we know that, there are some complexities to working through that. But as an example, DOE currently has a funding opportunity that's looking into clean energy deployments on current and former coal mines. So that's definitely an active area of development, which clearly requires project developers to think through the implications of how much do you want to reclaim versus hold on to the asset infrastructure.
Thanks, Briggs. And thanks, Mike, for the question. Anyone else want to jump in? All right, I think then, again, with that, please reach out to me directly. Use our, Four Corners Rapid Response, email, with any questions about what you've heard about today, any sort of comments in terms, comments and suggestions about how we can maybe frame the work of the Rapid Response Team in the Four Corners area over the, the next year. Very anxious to get your input. I don't think rapid response is successful unless we're sort of directly, integrated with the community. But I want to take the opportunity to thank all of our speakers and presenters today. And I want to thank all of you that have, taken part in today's event. Very much appreciated, and look forward to working with all of you, in the future. So take care. Bye now.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. Have a good day. Thanks.